Hello, hello. Welcome to the second episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. I'm your moderator, Begum Kaya, here with your lovely hosts, Tori Gray and Sam Torres. Thank you for all the lovely feedback that you gave us after our first episode. And if you haven't watched our first episode yet, please do. And for any questions you may have on our next episode, please submit them to thegray.company/ask-SEO-questions. And by the way, if you didn't realize what Opinionated SEO Opinions is, it's a web series geared towards the discussion and demystification of all questions related to SEO and digital marketing. We'll answer SEO questions with nitty-gritty details and high-level insights while we weigh in on very, very opinionated SEO matters.
Digging into the it depends. To quote
yes, it depends. It depends questions. Wonderful. I realized that we didn't we introduced ourselves, but we didn't really mention where we are located. So I will go first. I am joining from another continent from our lovely hosts. I'm joining from Europe, not to leave my European SEOs alone.
I have worked in SEO in Denver and in Asheville in the US, but I'm currently in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
And I am in Atlanta, where COVID cases are significantly higher. So that's great.
What a safe world we live in.
Yay, the south of the US. Woo!
Stay home, stay safe, get vaccinated, and end of the, what is it called in English?
We have
something like public spot that we introduce everything. I don't know.
Public what? You got quiet.
It's kind of like public, I don't know what it's called, like public hub where government is giving insights and recommendations to people to watch them on the television, basically.
We have the CDC guidelines.
Maybe.
Yes. They tell us things to do. Apparently the Biden administration is announcing things today.
Yeah, which the CDC is also in Atlanta. So
cool.
If there's ever an outbreak, it probably started here.
Yeah, I know why they filmed The Walking Dead in Atlanta then.
Yes, there you go. I like this conspiracy theory.
And it's right next to the FBI building, so everything's fine. Everything's fine. All right. Moving forward with SEO.
Let's get to SEO. Sorry, ladies. I just pushed everything away. Anyways.
We're also regular people. It's crazy. We do more than just SEO. It's weird. I know.
Yeah, it's completely weird. So let's get started, everyone. The first question is actually a combination of two questions coming from two different people on the same topic. And oddly enough, we published an article with Tori 6 months ago, which covers the same topic, since many cases focusing on it have ignored the perspective that we provided in that article. And some portion of this question has not been addressed by many SEOs recently as we saw it. And let's get to the questions. So the first one is coming from Keeley Stitt, product designer at Inclusivv, and she asks subdomains versus sub-directories, pros and cons.
Oh, the subdomain question, frequently fought over. Sam, do you want to take on this?
Sure. So for me, whenever talking about subdomains versus subdirectories, it's always going to become a question of really what's the function of what you're trying to do. Usually, in my experience, wanting to do a subdomain is either coming from developers or engineers, or it's coming from a particular platform that you're trying to use or tool set. So I will say the cases where I see subdomains are a good idea. Would be when maybe there are things behind an entire login. So if you are if you're a manufacturer, but then you also have an app that goes with your products, right? The app, that totally makes sense to put on a subdomain. Your support website, if you're a SaaS company, all of that kind of makes sense. And especially, some of those platforms, it does require you to put it on a subdomain. You can't install it in a subfolder anyways. But definitely, if it's going to be tackling the same kind of topic and the same audience, that's where I definitely say that Subfolder should win, so that you're really just keeping everything together for the user anyways. So, there's obviously a lot of issues that come with that. And then we can also talk about how does internationalization play into this. I think that's kind of like a separate subject that we can tackle in a little bit. But anytime that you're really talking to the same audience, my recommendation is usually to go into a subfolder. That way you're not trying to build up the domain authority of 2 different domains. So yeah, Tori, what would you like to add to that? And I'm sure there's going to be more that comes up as you're talking.
Yes, yeah, it is a meaty subject. Yeah, so I agree. I think there's certain use cases that make sense for having subdomains or entirely different websites, and that's okay. So from examples you used, one like classic example is if you're a public company, like your investment information, you need to keep public. So that being separate to me solves a different audience and a different use case, and keeping it separate makes sense. The help subdomain I'm also torn about because it's about the brand. So if and when possible, I'd like that to be part of the same domain. That said, pretty much every single service provider that's external wants you to put that on a help.subdomain, which I don't love, but I also understand like the logistics and the lift on that from an engineering effort is maybe not worth keeping it together, which is ultimately what matters, right? Like, is the benefit of keeping it together worth the cost of building up the infrastructure to make that possible? But the classic example here really is Disney. So Disney is obviously a huge company. They have Disneyland and Disney World, but they also have various franchises for Cars and Sleeping Beauty and Aladdin and Brave and what may have you. So Disney could not possibly keep everything all in the same Disney.com, right? So the entity that is Cars, the entity that is Brave, those things can be kept separately. So you can show the relationship to Disney on a subdomain, like a brave.disney.com to help show that relationship, or it could just be, disneysbrave.com or something like that. I think those are sort of equally fine solutions. The big no-no here to me is really separating your strategic content from what you do. So Google will tell you there is no difference between a subdirectory and a subdomain. Do what's right for your business, which is both true and incredibly misleading, right? Because there are situations when it does make sense to do for your business and times when it doesn't, and they're not providing clarity on that. So it's a continual conversation every time someone wants to move their blog to a subdomain, and then they point to this quote from Google and say it's not a problem. But there's a great thread we'll link to from Rand Fishkin that says, hey, do you need 13 case studies to prove to you that the difference between a subdomain and a regular site is meaningful? Because we have them. There is an incredible body of evidence that it is meaningful and different to have a subdirectory. There are also business use cases when it is okay to do so. So the biggest thing that I really think about is really, is it the same entity? And should you keep it together or not? And your strategic content is the same entity. If you're an e-commerce site and you're answering hows and why to's and all these kinds of questions about the products you sell, that should be on your main domain. Mm-hmm. I've seen it get split apart. So a site that was together gets split apart. And I've seen a site that was a subdomain that I recommended coming together. I typically see a flat 30% change, a 30% lift in traffic by consolidating them, and a 30% drop in traffic for removing it. It is a dramatic difference in your traffic and meaningfully what that means for your business. A caveat there would actually be, if your strategic content isn't very good, if you don't have a lot of links, if it's not valuable, then of course, the value of consolidating it is not going to be as high. But if you have great strategic content and you've been investing in that, then yes, it makes sense to hold it all together. I've heard some great theories, and I have my own about why that is. The best one I've heard out there is that perhaps there's a difference algorithmically between the way that links pass equity from external sites and subdomains versus internal links and what those means. Google does value different links in different ways. So maybe there is a systematic difference there, which I think is really interesting. Potentially not true, if only because Google says there's no difference. And Google, my personal opinion is I feel like they tend not to lie blatantly so much as they misconstrue and they obfuscate. And
well, I think there's also, you know, with RankBrain, there's now an AI. So there's only so much that we can even understand what they're doing, what RankBrain is doing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even just in the last really 18 months, the amount of work or focus I've seen from the SEO industry on internal linking signals is just increasing. Like it's becoming more and more important. The priority that you place on those things really makes a difference. So I think there's really some likely truth to it, but I agree. I don't think Google's out to straight up lie to us. Yeah. But you know, sometimes we have to let the evidence and the data kind of tell the story.
Well, my other than workaround for that would be like, maybe what they're saying is there's different business use cases when subdomains make sense. So there's no difference, do what's right for your business. And like ignoring the signals pass, but there's legitimate business use cases to do this. Well, like, yes, that is true. So maybe that's what they're speaking to when they say that. But to me, I think it's really more about the consolidation of your link equity and like the work that you put into a domain. If you're trying to rank 2 websites, that is going to be harder and more work and more expensive than if you're trying to rank 1 website, especially about the same subject matter. Does that mean you could be successful with 2 different websites? Subdomains are different websites, right? Like cars.disney.com is different than sleepingbeauty.disney.com. That is a different website. And I think people can forget that, or they think that they're related. They are related, but it's still separate. So it's still more work. If you have the budget to support that and you can make that work, then by all means do it. But not everyone in the world has all the budget to rank all the different domains for all the different things. So
yeah, I'd also like to add, so when you're doing subdomains versus subdirectories, there also can be a lot of weirdness with analytics and just being able to understand the data. So certainly if you use auto cookie domains with Google Analytics, then your subdomains will be included. But there's still, you know, as we do data analysis for our clients, there's a lot of times we run into clients didn't realize that that section of their website was actually included in their analytics profile, whether it's, you know, a separate subdomain because they have these targeted landing pages for their paid efforts, or that those support articles. And to go back to that, I agree. I'm kind of split sometimes on support areas. I have one client that they have millions of support articles and they are so duplicative that I'm really glad they don't touch the main website because it's not great content. Yeah. But then other clients, especially I think with SaaS, that content is usually so strong because it's such a great way, like, to kind of introduce solutions and introduce yourself as the solution, because people are looking at, you know, how do I do this myself? But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself and you'll see why. So support, and Tori, to what you said about like subdomains, there is a use case. It's kind of the same thing with like the pop-ups and interstitials. Like when a client is using an interstitial and it's for a reasonable purpose, it's one of those where we kind of have to trust that Google's going to understand that we're not trying to be spammy. We're not trying to like trick anybody. We're really, you know, there's information about this, you know, during the COVID start, and we have clients who are venues, all of the closure information that had to go in an interstitial so people would know. So I think there's a lot of that, trying to rely on Google being able to understand the purpose of these business use cases. And that all comes from our user engagement and how our users engaging with us. But yes, totally agree. Strategic content should always be in the same domain where possible. So I kind of want to flip it if we can and say, you know, what about those times when your engineering team is not budging and it has to go in a subdomain. How would we tackle that? Which obviously, I mean, I have an opinion, but I'm going to ask you first, Tori.
How do we tackle that in terms of like, how do we have that conversation with engineering, or how do we negate the worst effects of it? Because I mean, I still have clients that, I mean, sometimes there's technical barriers, right? If
Oh
you're
yeah,
on Shopify,
and that's what I mean.
you're on a big commerce and you don't use their blogging platform, you are stuck with a subdomain.
Or we even have clients who, again, family venues, their tickets platform has to be separate from their main website. And you just have to deal with it because of the technology that they have. So I feel like we've probably given a lot of fuel for having the conversation with your engineering team. But let's say head of IT, your CTO comes in and says, no, it's going to be this way. It's going to be a subdomain. How would you negate, or try to win back that 30% swing?
Great question. So, I mean, I'm going to start with setting expectations. Sometimes it makes sense on a business level. Like if you've invested $1 million into building a big commerce website and you can't keep your strategic content, like, does it make sense to build a whole other website in order to get your blog back on your subdomain? Like, even if you lose 30% of traffic, like, probably not, right? It's like too late. You're already too in the hole. You need to see what you can do to make the most out of this. What do we do? Some things I've seen done, like obviously internal linking. You can control both domains. Make sure you're linking to the perfect, correct URL that is 200 indexable. Make sure your canonicals are figured out. I've seen strategies specifically where people basically take their top performing content on the blog and create custom landing pages on the Shopify's and the BigCommerce, so that they exist on the main site. The things that have
actually making pillar pages. Yeah.
Yeah. So like take the critical pages and do the hard work to make the templates and make it work. Internal linking. What else would you bring to the table, Sam?
So definitely internal linking, navigation as well, just trying to make sure that there are clean paths really from wherever if it's a blog, for example, making sure the blog has some top level navigation to go back to the main site. I think you're totally right. Canonicalization is going to be really important. Making sure you're maintaining both sitemaps now, because at this point you're not going to have two different XML sitemaps. If you can, trying to get that domain verification in Search Console so that the subdomain could be included as well into your analysis. There's really no data that shows that relationship, that shows a better relationship as far as Google's understanding, but certainly being able to have all the data in front of you, I think empowers and enables you to make better decisions. Mm-hmm. Definitely, I love pillar pages and the ideas of like putting all that really yummy and like deep long form content and then having links to, the various resources or, just the classic kind of like hub and spoke model. I think it's really strong. But yeah, for sure, internal linking, and then also making sure that any kind of link building efforts, I would still always have it go back to the main domain. And then really, maybe include some social optimization or some social advertising for getting the resources, some impressions, getting some engagement, to really just kind of jumpstart all of that. But that's kind of what I would do.
Yeah, and I thought of one more, which is that if you're running multiple subdomains, you have to be much more thoughtful about your crawl budget, assuming your bigger sites. So
also your keyword targeting, you want to make sure you're not cannibalizing yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. But I think a thing people don't realize is that the crawl budget applies across subdomains. So while it is a different website, in that way it is treated as the same domain. So if you have a really crappy subdomain with a lot of duplicate content and a lot of thin pages, or a lot of like proliferation of indexed parameter variations that are not actually valid good variations, like that will eat into your crawl budget. So if that is a concern for your brand, then you need to clean it up everywhere. I mean, it's not uncommon to audit a new website and suddenly there are 17 or 50 or 150 subdomains for one brand. It gets real out of control real quick.
It really does.
It's fascinating, really.
Especially companies that have reps. Oh my God.
Hey, let's just try something new. Here's a new one, and here's a new one, and here's a new one. Just stop it.
All right. And then because I did mention it, I want to go back to it. And I'm just going to defer to Tori because you are the queen of this. What about internationalization, subfolders, subdomains? Go.
Oh, well, I like my crown. I think I know that's quite deserved, but thank you. In terms of internationalization, you've got three main options, right? You can do a subdirectory, you can do a subdomain, or you can do a top-level domain. To me, a subdomain is sort of the worst of both worlds. It's a different website, but you don't have the benefit of the localization factors that come with a top-level domain. Whereas the subfolder strategy means it's the same website and you get to work on one website instead of 2 or 3 or however many countries or languages you're targeting. So in terms of internationalization, really think through, are you doing country targeting or country and language targeting? Because those are different and they have different structural setups and different recommendations based on that. And that's a very common I think issue in defining your business priorities out the gate that mean that people often accidentally choose the wrong solution for themselves and end up creating a lot of duplicate content because Ahref, or not Ahrefs, that's Tool. Hreflang is not a get out of jail free card for duplicate content. You can't magically duplicate your website and then say, oh, it's the UK version and suddenly rank in the UK and magically everything's good. No, it's still duplicate content. It's still not targeted to that audience. Guess what? Moving into a new market takes work. Shock.
What?
I know. People
Dang
are
it.
more surprised than you think that they can't suddenly take over the world by simply making a copy of their website.
All right, brain. Oh, does that make me pinky? I think so. Pinky in the brain? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. That's about the sum of it. I mean, if you're only doing language targeting, then probably sticking to the sub folder structure is much more ideal. If you're doing country targeting, then I'm sort of tied between that solution and the top level domains that are country code specific when possible. Obviously, that's not possible in all places, but keep in mind if you do with country targeted versions, it's still multiple domains and it's still more work, but you probably have better ranking potential ability in the long term, assuming you're willing to put in the budget and the work over time. So,
and your technology supports it because not all CMSs can support a model like that. So
yeah, and it's not just the technology, it's also like, oh, now you have to really localize your content for Australia versus the UK versus America versus Canada versus wherever,
cookies versus biscuits.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just cookies versus biscuits and color with a U.
No, but it's fun.
Zebra, that's another one that I'm.
Zebra
versus zebra.
Or versus Zed, since you're in Canada now.
Apparently Zed is a thing, but I'm not sure if they call it zebra yet or not. I've not heard someone say zebra or zebra, but I did definitely laugh the first time I heard someone in the UK say zebra.
I love it.
In Turkish, we also say zebra.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, next time we go to a zoo together, Begum, I'm going to be laughing when you call it a zebra, just so you know.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds fair.
Do we feel like we beat the subdomain and subdirectory question into the ground?
Let's beat it into the ground. Let's bury it.
If you have more questions about it, if we didn't cover a specific use case that you're thinking about, just tweet at us. Gray.co. We'll put it in the transcript and a card, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Actually, I wasn't expecting that many key takeaways from this question, but very thorough and wonderful explanation. Thank you.
Sorry, Begum. There actually is one more. I'm reading Sara Burke-Allen's qualification on this. She added the related question: when considering launching a new sub-brand or an extension of an existing domain, what are the pros and cons? So yet another use case. I'd say it depends on how close it is to your brand. It is sub-brand, right? So for instance, I don't remember, like P&G, I think it is, owns, say, like Pampers and Loves. So the two biggest diaper take over the entire thing. They look completely different. They look like competitors. They're the same parent company. It does not make sense for those to sit together or on a subdomain. So consider your audience. How well aligned are they? How much do you want a brand association or not? Do you want to make that transparent or not? So I feel like it's really a brand decision at that point.
It really is. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I'd prefer to just say, we'll make SEO work, make your brand decision.
Mm-hmm.
And now have we really buried it?
I think that horse is really, yeah, it's,
we did it.
Got it gone. Okay.
Lovely and wonderful questions, Keeley and Sara. Okay, by the way, there's one more thing that I would like to mention. And Sam, when you asked how do you combine and how can you create signals that matches these two different websites? Schema.
Oh, always schema.
Beautiful.
Use it, everyone. Please use schema to give those signals to search engines that your brands are related if you are really trying to combine them under different subdomains and get that relation out there.
So how would you do that? Is that a same as?
They are not actually same as. There are some schemas under organization that you can say that this brand is owned by that company, and there is a hierarchical structure that you can apply when it comes to schema. And it applies very well, actually, if your audience is actually near similar, so that you're not really backing off from having those different subdomains under one roof, let's say. For example, it might be a good strategy for Inditex Group, including Zara, Massimo Dutti, Bershka, and Pull&Bear, and etc. But it may not be the best strategy for P&G, as you put it in your example.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's jump to our other question that is coming from Armina Fareed. Armina asks, what is your advice for someone who's looking on SEO growth strategy for B2B SaaS products? And I would like to mention that Tori recently spoke at Empower, Armina, and it's a conference for B2B founders and products growth leaders on agile strategies. I think we will be sharing your deck very soon. It should be ready, Tori.
Yep. Yeah, when we launch this episode, that will be live. So we'll give you the details of that. I'd also hint at a potential sort of 2.0 version of that deck coming soon that we're pretty excited about. Yay. So the initial deck really covers a high-level framework, right, for like how to be a continuous improvement machine. So it's really more geared to like the business leaders and like how do we create that process on the whole versus these specific step-by-step logistics of agile. So that we're working on, and we will launch soon, and that we're very excited about.
Yes, wonderful. So what is our best strategies and advices for SEO growth strategies for B2B SaaS products?
So I think to start there, obviously we're going to share the presentation. I definitely recommend consuming it. It's full of fantastic information, but just to kind of break down the small piece of it, if you're not used to what Agile is a methodology for approaching how to solve problems. It came from the engineering world, but really there's all kinds of applications. And at its core, it's really just talking about iteration. So basically getting to your MVP and then continuing to improve upon that and just building. So instead of trying to launch this perfect solution from day one, you kind of get to, like I said, that MVP, that minimum viable product, so that you can then start building. So it's really much the same with B2B SaaS products, right? Probably if you're working for a B2B SaaS product company or SaaS provider, your engineering team is probably already working on an agile system. So really with that, you list your requirements and then you start really looking at what are the big beefy goals that you'd like to accomplish. We usually call those epics. What are the things that you really kind of need and how are you going to get there? How does it align to things that you want to provide to your users? So we can approach SEO in very much the same way of basically we just have to first take stock of where are we, what do we want to accomplish, what are the current pitfalls, where are we lacking, where are our competitors. So it really has to be all relevant to your particular landscape. Because for example, if you're, a calendar appointment software company, chances are you shouldn't use the playbook by Disney. Just going to go out on a limb and say they're not going to be the same results. So really just looking at your competitive landscape and understanding from there and prioritizing, and then really just tackling what you can. And the agile, really at its heart, the agile process just means that every now and then you're going to come back and kind of redo that audit and analysis and reshift your focus, reprioritize your roadmap and what you want to do. And so for us, we usually do that on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, where we'll do kind of that huge business review. And even a lot of times that also means having conversations with the other stakeholders in your company to make sure you're still going after the same goals. Because especially with SaaS products, maybe a new feature has come out or you're releasing an entire new version. Your company goals may change, and you want to make sure that your SEO strategy is aligning with that. And so there's also different kinds of roadmaps depending on where you are in kind of the life of your company. So Tori, you want to tackle that?
Just to make sure I understand what you mean, I certainly want to talk through the different places that different SaaS companies launch at and where their industries are.
That's exactly it.
So specifically what I mean by that is that sometimes as a new player in the SaaS, like sometimes you're growing an industry. Sometimes people don't know it's a problem. And you have to educate them that there is a problem and that you have a solution. And that is a very different SEO play from people know that it's a problem, but they don't necessarily have the name for the solution. So your product is a new way to do that. Sometimes you're moving in on a market where there's already a big player and it's a very established, known set of terminology, like versus the other scenarios where you kind of get to make up and define what do you want to call that, right? And how do people respond to that? So some things to keep in mind there are, you're going to want to think through your keyword selection and what are people looking for already versus what are they not looking for, is one big piece. And really in that realm, if people aren't looking for you have to start where people are, right? Like you have to meet people where they are. So go do your keyword research and figure out what are they looking for? Do they understand the problem? Do they not? What are they looking for when they hit that wall, whatever problem you're solving? It's always going to be easier the more that people look for that theoretically, because like the easier it is, because more people look for it probably means there's more competition. So find people where they are and then hopefully translate your product as a solution for them. You can go about carving out, you really want to consider brand positioning in a really big fundamental way. What you call yourself matters and can vary people's willingness to pay for your product or how much they're willing to pay for it, and helps. Positioning, just think of like the anchors for pricing. They might have a vastly different willingness to pay for this platform versus this tool set or this software. So choose your keywords wisely. They might have different search volume, but hopefully you're also doing some brand building and some education of your customers to help grow that over time. So a lot of the work for SEO out the gate is about defining what is the opportunity today. So if you're in one of those emerging industries, keep in mind that you're also going to have to do some projections around what you believe you will do through brand building and educating people versus just taking advantage of what exists today. So your forecasting is going to be a lot different, and your baseline pool of what you can take advantage of is different. But in any scenario, you're always going to start with understanding what's happening now and then figuring out how to address them now, and then choosing those right keywords to go after. And then you just start trying to translate why your solution is meaningful.
Yeah, and the value it provides. And I think a really good way to think about it too, if you are trying to break into that industry that maybe doesn't have formal names yet, right? The solution isn't a well-known solution. You really do have to start moving up the funnel and think about, just like Tori said, what are the walls that people are hitting? So I think a great example is headless CMSs and that technology. Search volume around that barely existed 2-3 years ago. But what did exist is those companies were tackling issues like, my WordPress site is too slow, right? They were writing guides about that and how headless can be the solution for it. So you really have to think about, how long does that journey go? And especially for SaaS products and selling B2B, it is usually a longer sales process. So you really have to go super high up in that funnel and understand that your content, you're probably going to have to be talking to different stakeholders and walking them down the path. Because a lot of times it's going to be like, that tiny little marketing analyst was trying to figure out how to do something. So then they went to their marketing manager, who goes to the director, who then goes to the CMO to get money. Like, you have to talk to every single person in that chain to finally get the funds. So I think really thinking about what is that initial problem and how do you move them and empower each role to sell your solution to the next decision maker above them. That's something that the keyword research you do and looking at really what's ranking, what are the questions that are coming out. I think Reddit is a great resource as well for kind of understanding the frustrations that users are having and really just try to anticipate those needs beforehand. But then, like we say, especially for SaaS, you have to kind of reevaluate your landscape and see how it's changed. Especially in SaaS, I guarantee you wait 6 months and you have competitors you had no idea pop up. So you always need to be mindful of that.
Totally. And you brought up such a great point about the customer funnel. That is something you very much want to consider, because it's interesting in the SaaS SEO space where you have such advocates that are always all long tail all the time. And long tail inherently means almost always bottom of funnel, right? And then there's some people that are big advocates for only like brand awareness all the time. And I think it serves you to see what is happening in your industry. Where is the search volume? What are your competitors doing? What's their strategy? You always have to start somewhere, but starting somewhere might be, where is the gap in your industry right now? If someone's going after only top of funnel, it's probably the right play to go after bottom of funnel, and vice versa. If you could go top of funnel, you might solve their need so they never get to the bottom of the funnel, and then search for those things if you can answer the question out the gate, right? So again, it's competitive data, analyzing your funnel, where are people in it, where do you want to go hard first, and don't be afraid to break away from the pack, and then eventually layer in over time. So if you go big on all long tail and you feel like you've covered your ground, like, okay, so start going after customer advocacy content, like post-purchase. You could go brand awareness, but you could also go evaluation and consideration. Like, there are many different stages. And in terms of your pages on your website, make sure at some point, if you have a mature business, you should be going after all of them in a comprehensive way, right? But there are different good ways to launch. And they're both powerful plays, and there's not an inherently right answer there. Also,
that's why it always depends.
I think, like, go after your user, know your user, provide what value you provide to them, and make it be apparent on your side everywhere very clearly. And don't be afraid to go after those customers that your competitor was not able to satisfy. Just as Sam said, go out there and look for their comments on either on their websites, different forums, Reddit, anywhere, and get those clients. Also, I think there is another angle to that, which is come from PR and outreach. You can also build some relationships with industry leaders, entrepreneur hubs, and other, I would say, tiny newsletters that are trying to break out there and like cover some pretty good like B2B SaaS products and other things in the industry and being out there. So know your opportunities and dig into those and sustain relationships with other companies to get your work out there and get sister companies maybe.
Absolutely. Especially with the number of live events, obviously in-person events are down.
Definitely.
So all the different ways that SaaS companies are having to look at how to grow.
Yeah. Sponsorships are
important.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you for all your opinions, ladies.
Yeah.
By the way, if you hear screaming in the background, that is my 4-year-old. She's fine. She's just. So I don't know if you hear
her screaming.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you for assuring us. Yeah.
She's quarantining. She's great.
Quarantine's fine. Whee!
Okay, so everyone, thank you for all the lovely questions. I hope we covered them in a way that you would be satisfied with our answers and opinions. And thank you to everyone who shared their opinions and feedback after our first episode once again. And we're looking forward to seeing your feedback again, and maybe some spreading the love over the internet.
More questions. We want more questions.
Yes.
Yay!
And I think
questions.
Next episode, it looks like we're going to be covering different content questions regarding how long should it be? How do we hide it? How does that affect the relationship with the XML sitemap? And maybe talking about job qualifications and what do we think makes a good SEO? Should be fun.
Yeah. The link will be in the description below, but we are expecting your questions to be submitted at thegreat.company/askSEOquestions. And thank you for watching, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.